maybe I'll just be a little upfront. This is not a topic that I like to talk about, and I'm sure crime is not something that you like to talk about either. But obviously it's something we've seen in the headlines and we've seen happen on the streets. I'm wondering if we can just start off with what are Mayor Bibb's thoughts on what we're seeing on the streets in Cleveland?
It's frustrating and quite frankly unacceptable, the level of criminal behavior we're seeing in our city. And it is so important that we continue as an administration working in coordination with our judicial partners and our prosecutors to hold these criminals accountable. And I want to make sure that we continue as an administration to bring the full weight of the law and justice to these criminals.
Obviously, you grew up in Cleveland.
Yep.
I've been covering a lot of these stories just over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Talking to city leaders, talking to, just people in the newsroom, to just get some context, talking to people who live in the areas, on the streets. And some of them are saying, we've never seen it like this.
Yeah, we're seeing a level of criminal activity probably in a way that we haven't seen since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as you know, there are a lot of structural symptoms that lead to violent crime. Poverty, homelessness, mental health, all those things play a role, and that's why our administration is so focused on having a multi-pronged approach to address violent crime in our city. Aggressive law enforcement, working with our state and federal law enforcement agencies as well, but also investing on the front end, like our $10 million Neighborhood Safety Endowment Fund to invest in proven strategies and interventions that we know that can reduce violent crime in our city. And so we must do all of the above, from investing in young people and making sure we invest in our neighborhoods, but folks, particularly repeat violent offenders, need to know that we are going to go find them and bring the full weight of the law to hold them accountable, and that behavior is unacceptable.
And of course, hard to have this conversation without talking about the policing and those who are actually on the streets, going out there. What do you say about the shortage? And obviously this is something, you sort of inherited when you got into office.
Yeah.
Something that, a lot of police departments are dealing with. What do you say about just the lack of officers we have?
Well, I want to say this. As a son of a police officer, I continue to be proud of the amazing work that the men and women in our police department are doing every single day. And they are working around the clock to keep the city as safe as possible. And it's my job to do whatever I can as mayor to give them more relief and to continue to invest in them. That's why last year our administration, in collaboration with the police union, negotiated the largest pay increase in modern history for our police officers, and 11% pay increase over the next 3 years. That's why I'm looking forward to the upcoming Public Safety Summit we're going to have with the head of the FOP and the head of the CPPA to think about how we can do a whole myriad of things, from more signing bonuses, more retention bonuses, making sure we can potentially increase the academy pay for cadets joining our police academy. All those things are on the table because we must do whatever we can to invest in our police department to make sure we're fully staffed to fight violent crime and be as aggressive and proactive as we can to keep our city safe.
And in your mind, what would you say is the reason behind it? Because I think that when I've talked to a few different police departments, just in suburban areas as well. Obviously, they have a whole different playing field. But a lot of people are struggling with that, sparking that interest in the field to begin with. But I think that there's maybe that's just sort of magnified in the big cities.
I think the challenge has been the hyper partisanship nature that we've seen in our political climate when it comes to policing in America. And that really started after the tragic murder of George Floyd. And I'm someone who believes that public safety to me is very simple. I believe in constitutionally appropriate policing, where the residents I'm talking to from Lee Harbor to West Park, they want two things. Number one, they want the police to show up on time And number two, respect their rights as hard-working, tax-paying citizens of the city and of this country. And that's our mandate as a city. We're going to continue to invest in policing. We're going to continue to invest in new, modern ways to make sure we can cut down on violent crime. And if cops get out of line, we hold them accountable. But that doesn't mean our law enforcement officers can't be proactive, can't be aggressive, because I trust the training. You know, our department has made tremendous strides coming out of the consent decree nearly 10 years ago. And it is not the same police department that it was in 2014. And so we have a lot of great work to do, but we've created a strong foundation. That's why I'm excited about the marketing firm we're going to be bringing on over the next couple of weeks to really help us tell that story of why policing is an honorable, noble profession that gives many working class families a pathway to an amazing middle class life like I had. And we want to make sure we tell that story to continue to recruit and attract the next generation of officers.
Is the lack of officers that Cleveland has right now impacting what we're seeing in the streets?
I would say a couple things. It absolutely impacts our ability to continue to be as proactive as we want to be. But despite the fact that we're down nearly 20%, you know, we have been innovative and thoughtful about how we continue to cut down on violent crime in our city. We are going to be doing another strategy where we're looking at more focused patrols in hot spots in our city. We're combining our fire marshal, our building and housing department, and public health to our violent crime reduction task force units to really cut down on problematic after-hour spots. And we're augmenting our police department right now with the FBI, a DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshals to continue to cut down on gun activity, drug activity, and gang activity in the city. And so we're going to continue to use whatever resource we can while we do the hard work of building the new pipeline of cadets coming into our police department, because we have to use every resource in our arsenal to fight crime in the city.
I think a lot of these issues, having to do with policing and crime, sort of boiled over, understandably, last week, just with the shooting that injured 9 people. Can you take us back to that day? What was that like for you, hearing about that?
It was very hard. I was thinking of the worst possible outcome, where 9 people could have died in that mass shooting. And thank the Lord that we didn't see any fatalities in that mass shooting. And I was, quite frankly, just disgusted that someone from Lorain, who's not even from Cleveland, would enact that kind of a foolish act in our city. I know as Clevelanders, we are better than that. And what we saw in the Warehouse District does not represent what I know is the greatness of this city. And I look forward to seeing the suspects that we've apprehended be locked up for a very long time for the offensive and heinous act they committed. And that's for all the criminal activity we've seen in our city. One homicide is one too many for me as mayor. And we need to let these folks know that this behavior is unacceptable, and our officers, our prosecutors, and our judges are going to make sure that we hold them accountable.
As I've talked to some people in the wake of that shooting, there is that gratitude and appreciation. The city jumped on it. We've seen 2 arrests, investigation I assume ongoing, but obviously there was also sort of it led to this division or contention between at City Hall. What do you say about that city council meeting that happened just a couple of days after?
Well, listen, I have a lot of respect for the council president and all members of city council. And, we had to have an honest and hard conversation about the line between the emotional abuse of my cabinet and oversight. Those are 2 different things. And I believe we worked some of those issues out. As mayor, I know that people will say whatever they want to say about me. But at the end of the day, I have to protect the leaders of my administration and make sure that they know I have their back. And I look forward to continuing to have a very productive relationship with the council president and members of city council, because we all have so much more work to do to move our city forward. And Sometimes you have to have those honest and open and hard conversations to get to a better, more optimal outcome, and I think that's what happened last week.
Is there, you have a response to some of the criticism that was sort of laid into the office, during that council meeting? I'm talking about, city council, we've been doing everything that we can do when it comes to policing and crime. We're waiting on the mayor, is some of that.
Yeah, well listen, I would say, I think we were all frustrated. We've all been frustrated by the level of violence that we've seen this summer. And since I took office, and in almost every public speech I give, I'm always talking about why public safety is my #1 priority. And since we took office, we have been laying the foundation to make sure this city can be one of the safest cities in America. And obviously, the level of violent crime we've seen this summer has been challenging, but it does not negate the strong, intentional foundation our administration has laid to deploy a multi-pronged approach to reduce violent crime. Everything from making sure that we have trauma-informed social workers in 22 of our rec centers across the city, from our $10 million neighborhood safety endowment fund to the over $250 million of American Rescue Plan investments we've made to bring back our neighborhoods. All those things are part of making Cleveland a safer, more prosperous city. But we all have more work to do, from the business community to our foundation community, to clergy, to everyday residents, and we want to make sure we're supporting every stakeholder in the city to keep our community safe.
I guess that leads to, and you've been kind of talking about it throughout, this announcement yesterday.
Yeah.
New investments. We actually reached out to City Council yesterday. It sounds like at least some of them weren't aware that this announcement was coming. So actually, let me just take a step back. Is the mayor's office and council united, sort of moving forward?
Absolutely.
To combat crime?
We are all united to combat crime and keep our city safe. My public safety leadership will be meeting with the safety committee on August 2nd. And we're all looking forward to continuing to build a strong foundation around safety. I've continued to keep the council president and Councilman Palentic apprised of my conversations with union leadership about what we want to do to make sure we can be fully staffed over the next couple of years. And I think we're all looking forward to the hard work ahead.
So let's talk about some of these investments. One of the things that stuck out to me in the press release yesterday was promoting aggressive enforcement. In fact, you mentioned it just a bit ago, and increased police visibility. Is this a new approach, or how would you describe that part of it?
Well, if you recall, last year we had a new requirement requiring all of our officers to walk the beat for at least one part of their shift, first and second shift, in order to beef up that police presence. And what we've seen this year is we need to be more precise and more data-driven in terms of how we target hotspots. And so that is new. A new focus patrol hotspot deployment initiative, so we can really be more precise in terms of how we deter and then also cut down on violent crime in the city. Secondly, intelligence is so important. In this day of policing where you have so much happening with juveniles and them stealing Kias and Hondais, we have to get more intelligence. That's why I'm really happy City Council unanimously approved my budget this year to bring on 5 new crime intelligence analysts that will be fully housed in our real-time crime center, so we can kind of get those trends, get ahead of those trends, and start to use that intelligence to really be more precise in terms of how we're cutting down on violent crime. Now, since we took office, we have always had a very strong and robust partnership with the Ohio Highway Patrol. Last year, we did 2 special operations around warrant sweeps and cutting down on ATVs and dirt bikes. We're deepening that partnership this year to have more enhanced traffic enforcement with the Ohio Highway Patrol. And then because of a great relationship we have with the head of the ATF, Steve Dettelbeck, and others, we're doing more around illegal gun activity to get these guns off our streets. And so there's a lot I can talk about, there's a lot I can't talk about, but now it's all about how do we have more sustained partnerships with state and federal law enforcement agencies to keep Cleveland safe.
I think one of the questions that came up for me as I was going through this and talking about this marketing plan for police recruitment and things like that, and I think one of the things that critics would ask is, what took so long? Why did it take
Yeah.
so long to do this?
Well, number one, we wanted to make sure we were getting the right firm that had the right scope of work to meet the needs of Cleveland. And I'm not going to rush that process because it's so important that we get it right. And so we wanted to take our time and be thorough about having the right firm with the right scope of work to meet Cleveland's needs. And that's what led us to finalize the contract that we'll be announcing over the next couple of weeks.
Would you agree, though, that there would be some urgency with it?
There's always urgency, hence why my first thing I wanted to tackle was increase in police pay. We got that done last year. That's why we wanted to make sure we increased our ability and having more analysts in our real-time crime center. We got that done with this year's budget. That's why we prioritize more technology investments around expanding ShotSpotter. We're going to have more license plate readers all across the city as well too. Expanding our smart camera sharing program. All these things are urgent priorities that we've gotten done since we took office last year, and we recognize that there's still more to do, and we will continue to always be urgent about our public safety needs in the city.
I want to go back to one thing I'd asked about the aggressive enforcement and increased police visibility. From what you said, it sounds like that to you is speaking more about the technology that we're putting into this, not necessarily the interactions between police and individuals?
Both. It is both. It is both. That's why we wanted to extend and expand our violent crime reduction details to include building and housing and the fire department so that we can beef up our ability to shut down some of these problematic after-hour spots and hot spots in the city. And now we're looking at how do we deploy our officers in a more aggressive way in these hot spots to prevent and deter crime where it's occurring as well too. And that will be augmented by additional law enforcement support from our federal and state partners.
The last time we spoke, we were talking about the economy sort of making Cleveland a destination spot.
Yes, absolutely.
Where does crime fit in all of that?
Well, having safety and making sure we're a safe city is a prerequisite to economic opportunity. And it's so important that we continue to prioritize public safety but also invest in our neighborhoods, because if you have a job, if you're running a small business, if you feel like you can buy a home, you're less likely to commit crime. And so our administration will continue to deploy an all-of-government approach, investing in our neighborhoods, putting people first, making continued investments in mental health supports, investing in our young people, because all that makes us a safer city long-term.
And this question, it's hard to say. I know that, but you look at these investments. You look at this press release and some of the other things that your office has come out with, and they sound great. Is it what kind of outcome or what kind of numbers or what do we expect to see?
Well, I mean, last year we saw a 10% reduction in gun homicides and an overall 9% reduction in homicides. This year the numbers are up. And there are a lot of trends leading to that. This national phenomenon around juveniles stealing Kia and Hyundais has been very problematic. It's been a major driver in the increase in Part 1 violent crimes we've seen in our city. Every big city has also seen this as well too. That's why we're excited about the new pilot program we have with the county around cracking down on juveniles that are stealing cars in our city, with more aggressive monitoring and more aggressive enforcement during the pretrial era with these juveniles. But again, the best result will be continued confidence that violent crime goes down. It's going to take time. It's not a magic wand, but we believe the partnerships with the FBI, U.S. Marshals, ATF, and DEA will be effective. We believe more visible police presence in these hotspots will be effective. And we also believe that the long-term investments we're making in young people, the long-term investments we're making in our neighborhoods will be effective long-term to make Cleveland and continue to make Cleveland a more prosperous city.
One of the things that we talked about just several weeks ago was this push for bonuses. Is that something you guys are looking at? Because I know
we are exploring all of that, and obviously I can't get into details because of negotiations with the union, but we're looking at a whole menu of options to invest in our police department.
Because is it right to say that we still have that some of money that was allocated toward like 180 additional officers.
Absolutely. And we just got an additional $1.4 million from the governor for additional investments in our first responders as it relates to retention bonuses as well too. So we have some capital to put to work, and we have to negotiate that with the union.
Another item of news that came out yesterday, your rejection of the police commission's choice for executive director. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, quite frankly, I was not pleased with the process of the Community Police Commission in terms of how they led to the appointment of interim director Jason Goodrick, and I believe we should have a transparent, open process, and I'm hopeful and optimistic, and I believe the commission will hopefully have an open and transparent process.
What message do you want to send to voters? I mean, there's, well, not just to voters, but just to citizens, people in Cleveland. Apart from, the list of things that we have here that you guys are trying to put into policing, how do you reassure them? How do you let them know, hey, you're seeing this crime too, and it's not just them? Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, I'm seeing it too. And obviously I'm frustrated and angry at the level of crime we're seeing in our city. But know that our administration is not sparing any expense to keep our city safe. We're going to continue to work with the business community, our prosecutors and our judges to hold repeat violent offenders accountable. And also want to let our residents know, number one, if you see something, say something. If you're a small business owner and you have a camera, sign up to be a part of our smart camera sharing program. If you're a resident and have a Ring camera or a doorbell camera, sign up to be part of our smart camera sharing program. But also, if you see a young person who needs help, help them. Mentor a child, connect them to one of our rec centers. We all have a role to keep our city safe, and know that our administration and the mayor is working around the clock to keep Cleveland safe.
Is the city working quickly enough, responding to this?
Absolutely. As I said before, since we took office last year, we have been working around the clock to invest in police, modernize our police department, and invest in putting our people in neighborhoods first.